Wallace, and Chief LaChance, and I'm remiss on the last one.
John Gannett, the Assistant Chief.
And the assistant. Thank you very much for coming down tonight. So what we have been doing in the last budget meeting, the same is if you have questions about them, go line by line by line. We're going to dialogue. If you have a follow-up, you don't have to ask for a follow-up. We can have this respectful dialogue between the two, like we did last week. We can have that dialogue. So what we'll do is we'll start with Fire Chief for changes, implementation, looking at the budget, whether there are constraints, pros, cons, for any the software that you'll be putting in, anything that's in the budget. Manpower, what's going on with manpower, just an overview of the department.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, and thank you for accommodating my schedule for surgery tomorrow. So I appreciate you taking care of that for me. And it's just very grateful for that. I'll let you do it. Probably more than I do.
Page 30.
So I guess the first thing that's probably worth mentioning is if you look at the
Page 30.
salary items, you have the salary sheet, but that is, yes, with the, okay, so if you look at the salary sheet, one of the things that you'll see, we're currently well into the process of hiring some firefighters to bring our staffing level up to, which would give us 70 firefighters July 1st. That's 70 firefighters. That's not the officers, that's not the inspector and the fire alarm superintendent. So 70 puts us really close to the numbers that we were at probably 15 years ago, which gives us a little bit of a buffer. So that when we have some unforeseen things in the reason whatever else, we won't run into some of the problems that we've been running into the last few years. That process is probably about 80% done. We've done all of the interviews, we've done all the background checks, we're starting to schedule the medical exams. So I'm hoping that we'll have most of them on payroll sometime in June. They'll have to do some training, they'll have to go to the fire academy and that, but that should take make a big difference in the way we operate in FY18. So this will be actually, I can say since I've been chief, this is the best position we've been in terms of starting a fiscal year. So I think this will be a good thing for us and for the city. The other thing that you'll see in the salary sheets, and I know that I did mention it a little bit the last time I was here with the council, is the, you see there's a new category for dispatchers. So what that is I have 4 dispatchers listed. These would be civilian dispatch positions. These are new positions. This is something that the mayor and I and
Part of consolidation, I'm sorry.
yeah, eventually part of the consolidation of dispatch, but this would be the first part of it, that we'd be relocating dispatch, my dispatch to South Attleboro. This would be the first part of it, is having these civilian dispatches train with the firefighters who are doing the dispatch. So we have 4 positions budgeted for FY18. And that's something that the mayor has been committed to. We've had some preliminary discussions with the union, so we still have a couple of things that we still have to address, but they are in there, budgeted for the full fiscal year, so that hopefully we can get that started sooner than later. And when you look at all of those factors, one of the things that I would like to just point out about the salaries is if when I combine my salaries, overtime, line of duty, night differential, college credits, when I combine all of those categories, you'll see that if you added that all up, that the FY18 budget for those categories combined is actually a tiny amount below the FY17 revised budget. So at least from the side of personnel, we're not really looking at a budget increase when you look at all of the categories. So that's kind of the where we are with the personnel.
Just not yet. Wait, not just yet.
Okay.
Were you finished with that particular line?
With that part, I am, yes.
Okay, because I had a question too.
Okay.
As the chair first, and then I'll ask. Okay. For the overtime, for the revised 17,844 down to 400,000, is that because on the salary line you're saying we'll have less overtime because we'll have
yeah, could you
more
say the number again
firefighters?
that you saw? What was the dollar value?
It is, I'm sorry, and what we're doing is account numbers too. Barry brought up last time. It's easy to go for the fire, the 513000, the overtime. So then in revised budget 17, the 844,000, and this year you're asking for 400,000?
Sure. So if you looked at last year I asked for 400,000 to start the fiscal year. Although I had to ask for some additional funding because we had some bigger holes with some injuries and some unexpected retirements. The majority of that increase, and it's actually not 844 or whatever you have, it's actually now, as of today, 903,000. But what that is that's just transfers almost exclusively from my salaries account to the overtime account because of unexpected retirements. I just had a captain retire that we weren't expecting, so I'm going to have to be doing some of those transfers. So the 400 really, if we were able to have hired everybody on time like we were trying to do, and we didn't have any retirements that we didn't expect, it would have been a lot closer to the 400 than the 900. So I got an additional appropriation, I think it was $140,000, so the real cost is really $540,000. The rest was just absorbed from my own salaries. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, and sometimes you just never know about overtime, like you're going for surgery. That's not something that, not for you particularly, but hypothetically.
Right.
Like
no,
an example,
absolutely.
you have to go out, so you can't control when people get sick or if they have to go out for something.
No, and fortunately, when it happens at the beginning of the fiscal year, we can absorb a lot of it, and as time, you can kind of cross your fingers and hope that if we're fortunate, we don't have any injuries. This is a challenging time, so I made sure that my assistant chief is prepared for the next 3 to 4 weeks in case something unforeseen happens. And I can assure you that I have a lot of dialogue with the mayor and there's still cash, so they're well aware of how tightly we look at where we are financially, and that we don't ask for anything unless there's unfortunately no other options.
Exactly. Councilor Hall?
Thank you. That was the exact question I was going to ask, but in doing that, I just had another interest question, which is about retirements. Do you find yourself in a position where, and let me take that back. On your retirements, pending retirements, possible retirements, are these usually senior people, and usually it's a larger amount of money? Do you see anything at the worst case scenario? Let's just say everybody that's in the bucket to retire did that. What would be?
Oh, well, that's and I've had those conversations with the mayor because you have to. I don't want to cry wolf. I probably have 20 guys, 20 firefighters that could retire. Once they're 55. 55 and 32 years is the maximum, but anybody that's 55 or close to 30 years is fair game to consider retiring. So if you look at those numbers, it could be. Really, you're looking at well over $250,000 in severance and stuff. The severance wouldn't be my concern. The concern would be the massive overtime that would be required, and because there'd be no way to replace the people in a timely manner. That doesn't, most of the people that retire, it's not a major surprise. We usually have some advance notice. Even when they're injured, we know that it's coming. I have one more firefighter that's been out with a line of duty injury, and his retirement should be finalized within the next 3 to 4 weeks. But I've known about his for at least 6 or 8 months. If you look at the, to get an idea, if you look at the line item for line of duty injury. Where is that amount?
It's 517225.
517.
You're like 5 up from the bottom.
517,225. So
So
yes,
relative.
as of today, it's $286,442 as a ballpark. You can multiply that by 1.5, and that tells you what that costs in overtime. It's for the most part, we don't have sufficient staffing, even if we had a few extra firefighters or officers with vacation and sick leave and other things. That number right there is the one number that is hard to manage and predict. In 2010, my first year as fire chief, I had almost no line of duty injuries. It was virtually zero. It was maybe 500 hours. And we average about 5,000 to 6,000 hours now. We just had a firefighter that we thought broke his wrist in a fire, broke his hand. It turned out that it's not broken, but he's been out, for a month or so.
Yeah, probably going on a month now.
Went on a month, so there's really not much we can do about that. But that number is the one, the IOD is the one that actually makes it all fluctuate.
Councilor Delacia?
Moving on to the education line, I see it jumps up from 65 to 209. Is that
Yep.
to account for the
So actually, that's one that I had highlighted. One of the things I had spoken to the mayor about earlier this fiscal year is a driver training program. We have a lot of new, younger firefighters, They don't have experience driving trucks like some of the older firefighters do. We used to hire guys that were truck drivers, you know, CDLs. Now we're hiring, you know, EMTs and paramedics. They don't have any experience with anything other than the car. We've had a series of small accidents, nothing significant, but what I'd like to do is try to, you know, limit some of the liability for the department in the city, and plus make sure that everybody's, you know, safer out on the road. So we found a company that does a high-level emergency vehicle training program. Is it New Hampshire?
No, it's up in the Boston area.
Boston area. So what they'll actually do is, I want to do it for the whole department one time, so everybody in the department will be subjected to the class one time. It's like an 8-hour classroom and 4-hour on the...
Right, it's actually aggressive driving. It's similar to what the police do in their academy. Unfortunately, the fire academy does not have a driving component. So, you know, we have noticed an increase of minor accidents, and you know, we feel it's a good time to address it.
Especially if you see the news, it's you know, fire engines, especially fire apparatus with the water tanks, even though there's baffles, they don't handle like a regular vehicle. So the best way is to get people to training with a professional that's familiar with it to do it under those circumstances. So one of the conversations I had with the mayor is that we talked about trying to do this over a period of years, but you always run the risk of you're going to miss different groups of people or whatever, and he agreed strongly with me that this was a good thing for the department in the city. We even talked to the insurance agent a little bit. There would be a cost savings, though they couldn't quantify it. It would be after the program was done, I'd have to provide something from the company, and they'll look at it. You know, they couldn't tell me a specific percentage or anything. But once that's done one time, what we would do is in the future when we hire people, we would just send the people we hire. So now the cost is not as extreme. The tuition was at I have it someplace. So was it 800 per person?
About 500 per person.
500 per person. We have close to 100. That's the tuition. The other cost, which Mr. Delicio was alluding to, is the cost of overtime coverage for them to go. So that's a roughly $150,000 in overtime coverage to get them to go off duty so that they can attend that training. So one-time cost, and then we'd be looking at something, you know, every 4 or 5 years a refresher. But they can come actually do that down at the station. Once we've had the initial training, they can come do something with our own vehicles, you know, in a lot that we had permission to use, just to kind of refresh what they've learned on the tracks that they do it on. So I don't know if that answers that question.
Absolutely does, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions going through? Mr. Conti, Mr. Perica? Mr. Hall? Mrs. Jackson? Mr. Blair? Anyone else have any other question? Anything that sticks out as we're going forward? What we're doing is not just going line by line, but having a dialogue if there's any changes. Let's see. For the dispatch with the software, when is that going to all be installed and implemented? And
Yeah, I don't know if you've received something yet. I know that Chief Hegney and I were working on a memo, trying to get it done before I'm going to be out for a little bit. We're looking at maybe changing the vendor for the dispatch software that the police department presently uses. I don't know if you've received that communication yet, but if you haven't, when you do, it's actually a superior software, a better pricing. It's actually less expensive. And I know that that's what Chief Hegney was researching. But regardless, that software will be getting implemented early FY18, so that'll be the first step of us relocating our dispatch.
okay, and revenues coming in for have they stay the same, leveled off, go up, spikes?
They're pretty consistent. The fire prevention fees are right on track with last year. The EMS revenue is probably a little bit ahead of schedule than it was last year, and we should be getting a large Medicaid reimbursement, $300,000 or $400,000. We get it in July, but it's credited to FY. It'll be credited to FY17 since it was FY17 patients. So the revenues are probably up 5 or 10% from last year.
Okay, good. Okay. Mr. Conti?
Chief, on 558320 fall weather gear,
Yep.
you've got a 100% increase.
Yep, good question. So that was another item that I've been speaking to the mayor about. One of the things that we're looking at is there are certain things that are put in capital improvements, and I actually think you had alluded to this in previous years, if I remember, maybe about different items, that there really should be an operating budget if there's a way to do it, because it's something that I need every year. We were many years behind on our turnout gear when I became chief. We had guys with gear that was 15 to 20 years old, and the standard is 7 or I think 10 is the maximum. I can't even send somebody to the fire academy if their gear is more than 10 years old. So that was one of the things we tried to address, and if you recall, that was the expense, the 4-year plan of like $50,000 or $60,000 a year to get us caught up. Now that we're caught up, what we're trying to do is two things. One is that all fire departments today, the firefighters have 2 sets of gear. They need to have 2 sets of gear, and the reason that they need to have 2 sets of gear is once they're in a structure fire, those are recognized, carcinogens, those are toxic items, and they shouldn't be using that gear until it's properly decontaminated. You can't decontaminate it. We have machines to clean it. We have extractors and stuff, but you can't really do it if they only have 1 set of gear, because then it takes like 24 hours for it to be washed and dried and everything. So we're fortunate that we have some spare gear, and we do have, the option to, on an individual basis to do that. But when a whole shift is at a structure fire, and then they need to, get out of their gear and do something, we don't have the backup gear for it. So one of the conversations I had with the mayor is to try to make it sustainable, is just get on a schedule that we buy a new set of gear for every firefighter every 4 to 5 years. So now the second set of gear will be within the 10-year range as well. And now that we're caught up on the first set of gear, it seemed like an opportunity to try to get a system to get in place with the second set. And actually, it was Captain Jackson that actually was the one that helped me come up with the numbers for this to be caught up. And it was his recommendation that number, $50,000 a year, now that we're caught up, if we can try to commit to that, that there should be no real problem for us making sure everybody has a second set of gear. Take us a couple of years to do it. And originally the mayor, he was leaning towards putting it in capital improvements just to help balance the budget and everything. But when I presented it to him, when I had my budget meetings, he was very receptive and accommodating, and was able to keep it in the budget. So it was actually something that I wouldn't have been shocked if it was cut, but then I'd be coming back asking for it. This just helps us planning so that in July, the assistant chief or whoever we delegate it to can actually start to order the gear, because it takes 90 days to get the gear. It's not like you just order it and it comes in.
We live in New England, so you have all the seasons. So during the ice, when we had someone fall through the ice from over near the Elks, what kind of gear?
We have, we call them Gumby suits. That's not the technical term, but they're ice rescue suits.
Okay.
So they're heavily insulated, and they hold a little bit of air. They're somewhat buoyant, so you're floating them a little bit. Those are, that would fall under firefighting supplies. Mm-hmm. That's actually something that's in capital improvements to be purchasing that, updating that as well.
And they're per truck or?
We keep them we keep them at the headquarters. We keep them in South Attleboro. That way, if they need them, it's not on a truck that's on a call, so somebody can always get it and get it to the incident.
Each truck has one now.
Each truck has one now. See, I should know. That's what I have them for.
Okay. Yes,
Sure.
Council Hall.
I'm going to go back to that line. So foul weather gear in actuality is a misnomer here.
Yes.
We're talking about hazmat.
Yeah, it's for us personal protective equipment.
Right,
Yes.
so you're switching out, which makes sense. And I'm just going for clarity and my clarity and perhaps other people, does that include masks?
The masks are when they need to be replaced, we replace them. So yes, they don't all need 2 sets of masks, because the mask you can decontaminate a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. It's more of the gear that can absorb things. The mask is mostly plastic, so it's not that permeable. It's the turnout gear actually can absorb. They call it off-gassing. So whatever chemicals they're exposed to in a fire, formaldehyde is probably one of the bigger ones. Once it's in their gear, it off-gasses, even in the station, if they have the gear in the house. The old days, people would take their gear everywhere, it'd be in the cars, they'd be home. You're kind of getting away from that, but it does off-gas. And there's been cases of if you look at some of the cancers in the fire service, they're depending on what statistics you look at, the fire service is at least 2.5 times as likely to get cancer. If you just look at our department, I have tons of guys that are in their mid-50s that have cancer. I mean, it's a large number of people. We just found out another one today died from cancer, a retired firefighter. We didn't know. And he was 55, maybe 60? I won't say his name.
Right, he's got to be in his 60s by now.
But I mean, so, that generation, they weren't using protective gear as much as we do today, because it was a different mentality back then. But even today with the gear, what happens is the off-gassing, if you're going on other calls later, you're still absorbing the chemical, so it's not just at the fire. That's probably the main reason that I want to be able to give them a second set of gear, so that I can put a policy in place that says, after an incident, not you may, you must take off that gear, put your new gear on, and decontaminate it.
So my question, I guess, is why does each individual firefighter need their own personal second gear?
Well,
I mean, I'm asking that as a rhetorical
Yeah,
question.
it's custom sized. That's a big part of it. I mean, you could probably get away with 40 sets for the department.
Yeah.
That you could, but they also have people's names on them.
Right,
so we
they
use
have to
that.
fit.
And they have to be fit, but the names are on it for accountability. In New York, as an example, as morbid as it sounds, when they were looking through the rubble for bodies and stuff, that's one of the things that they're using to identify who they have. So there's a bunch of reasons, and the gear would be at different stations. So if somebody was at the South Attleboro Fire Station and all the spare gear was at headquarters, they have an incident at South Attleboro, now I have to have somebody bring it down. So
No, thank you,
yeah, no, there's a lot of reasons.
Thanks.
The floor is open for questions. If anyone has any questions. Did you have anything else too that you wanted to expound upon?
On that topic or in general?
In general, for the
In
department to
general,
give us a,
Well, let me see if I'm missing anything here first that you guys didn't already bring up.
the restructure with certain promotions and the restructure, what's the residual effect now?
We're close to being fully implemented. I mean, all the positions are filled. Now, through attrition, the number of lieutenants is increasing, and the number of captains is decreasing. Was it 10 and 10 now?
we're now down to 9 captains.
9 captains. So once we're down to 8 captains, it'll be 12 lieutenants. And other than the deputy chief's rank, which will be changing to district chief, it's pretty much fully implemented. So there'd be no more cost associated with the reorg. It's been well received and effective, done what we needed it to do. The only other thing that is probably has some relevance is that what you will see in probably the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years, is you're going to see a lot of the senior command staff retiring. So that's something that we've been trying to wrap our hands around and see. We're losing a lot of the senior officers, and now we're going to have 25, 30-year-old people in positions that are pretty important, and we're working on options to make sure that they're prepared for those next steps. It's something that we haven't done very well. I think most departments don't do it very well, as we don't have a system quite yet in place to mentor and develop and prepare people. It used to be that you just got to that point because of your years of experience, but the job has changed so much that they really need a more formal process to get them to that point. So that's something that we'll be working on.
What's the average age of our firefighters?
Sorry?
The average age?
Of the department?
Yes.
Average, if I had to take a guess, 30.
Okay.
Yeah,
And what
we're
is-
coming on.
And what is the like as a new firefighter? How old are they when they're coming in?
Most of them they're like 23, 24.
So you're saying that there will be some promotions that'll be made with individuals who have maybe 7 or 8 years of experience.
Correct.
And what is your ideal length of time experience?
I guess it depends on the individual, but that was one of the benefits of the reorg, is that now to get promoted, they have to become a lieutenant first. Mm-hmm. So they become a lieutenant, they get a little bit of experience in the supervisory role, then they become a captain. But I'd say at least 5 years is optimal, 5 to 10. It depends on the person, though. And of course, the circumstances dictate it. It doesn't always work out that way. If guys waited 5 or 10 years, they may never have an opportunity. So, but with the reorg, there's more opportunities for that, so there's definitely a lot more interest in people doing that.
Right. Well, I guess that's in our previous conversations over different budget years. That was the concern, is that there needed to be more room for growth or advancement for individuals, so that they would want to stay.
Correct. Right.
So it sounds like
Yeah, we haven't had. I can say that we haven't had any issues that I can recall now over the last couple of years with people leaving to go to other departments. We did have one who resigned because he was going to be fired, so that really
That's smart.
wasn't so bad. But other than that, I don't think we've had a lot of people.
No,
that
none.
really.
That
Lately.
has decreased, because there was a period of time
It
where that was
definitely
happening quite
has.
frequently, but that's.
The consensus among surrounding communities is that this is a department and this is a city where people want to come work as firefighters. So hopefully we keep that going, because it's more cost effective to keep employees than it is to, retrain them and keep trying to recruit. So,
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
thank you.
Council Hall?
I just have a comment. Based on your description of what the sort of, I guess, the demographics of the force right now, I do have to say there was some conversation, maybe some concern, anxiety, I guess is the best word, about the assistant fire chief. And now I must say, based on the demographics of your population, I think that was a very forward-thinking move, based on now the attention that you're going to have to put on a young workforce.
Right. Well, and his role, it's evolved because he basically, he handles all the day-to-day stuff. I don't have to handle any of that anymore. We don't have that in writing yet. That'll be the next step. But he can tell you as well as anybody. He had no idea what the job was going to entail. And what that lets me actually now start to think about the future and the things that I should probably put more attention into. What we do in 5 years, 10 years, as opposed to what we're doing next week.
Appreciate that.
So thank you.
And I see you here all the time, so.
Yeah, I'm here all the time. I'm a busy guy.
Pretty much every time I'm here, you're here.
Counselor Jackson? Thank you. Hi, Chief.
Hi.
How many day people do you have now since you reorged?
Day people, well, it's myself, the assistant chief, the fire prevention deputy, the inspector, fire alarm, and EMS director, so 6.
And just for clarification, though, anybody that becomes a lieutenant doesn't have the opportunity to become a captain, because they would automatically become deputy, because they're not going to have captains anymore, correct?
No, we
No,
keep
no, no.
captains.
You're going to keep captains?
Yeah, there's going to be lieutenants and captains. There's
Okay.
just less captains. So we went from 12 down to 8.
13 to 8.
Okay,
For the reorg.
13 to 8. Thank you.
And the captains, one is going to be South Attleboro because they're in charge of a larger group of people. One will be at headquarters. The lieutenants will be, one will be at headquarters, but the other ones are outlying stations where they have just an engine company to
Okay.
be in
Thank
charge
you.
of.
Thank you.
Counselor Conte?
So, you're taking 2 captains out. I'm seeing 11th captain in fiscal year 17 with no salary item, and 12th captain, no salary item. But I see in the salary list that you've got 8 planned hires to replace retired firefighters. But I've missed the number of firefighters you have that are 55 and 20 years.
55 and 30 years.
Yeah,
It's an estimate because I run those numbers every so often, but it's got to be close to 20.
20.
I got to have close to 20 guys that could retire. I don't, the one thing that's changed for most of the firefighters, as long as they're healthy enough, most of them today are not retiring at 55, because the ones that have, unless they have another career or something that they're doing, they've kind of quickly realized that after they retire, they're going to have to go do something. So as long as they're physically capable of doing it, I don't see as many. We have a lot that stay till 65. So while I say 20 could go, I don't have any in here for this fiscal year for retirements, because I don't have anything concrete that says anybody is definitely planning to go. And again, that's a conversation I have with the mayor. When I have a reason to believe that somebody's going to retire, I would, I certainly would make sure you do it.
Your union contract gets negotiated this year?
Yes. And that's something we're looking at, is some options to encourage / require a little bit of notification within reason when they can, because they can't always. I mean, if you have a health issue and you want to retire, there's really nothing anybody can do about it.
Well, you're no different than any other department. I mean, 80% of your budget's salaries,
Right.
and that's what's driving the bus.
Yep.
And in the last 4 years, I'm speculating, your budget's grown 20%.
Probably close to that. I mean, some of it is contractual, though. A lot of it,
Right.
2 or 3% raise is going to have a significant effect. But it hasn't grown too much this year.
Right, this year you're stable, but last year was tremendous growth.
Yep.
Because you restructured. So it's nice to see it coming down, but still driving the bus in the budget. Because you know, as everything, as all the salaries get more expensive. We were talking about this with the mayor last time. It's throughout southeastern Massachusetts, it's not just Attleboro. But as the salaries become such a elephant in the room, it's gonna put pressure on the small departments.
Yep. But that's also a double-edged sword, because if you're not competitive with surrounding municipalities, then you have a different problem. So
I agree. We see the same thing in the school system.
it's not an easy solution.
Right.
Thank you. Any other questions for the chief and deputy chief? And you're non-union now, right?
Yeah.
Assistant chief.
I do have one thing that you may or may not be aware of. If you were to look under the maintenance of building and building maintenance supplies line item, you will see that those numbers are significantly reduced. And it's a little bit misleading, because one of the things, you should have got a memo from the city auditor, something that we set up this year. I did it for a couple of reasons. Some of it's accounting. So I now have a maintenance of buildings line item for each of my 4 fire stations. And the reason that we're doing that is that we want to be able to delegate some of the day-to-day decision-making for that to somebody in the department. We haven't quite figured out who is going to be the best person to do it. But what I found is that even with the best intentions, when you have too many people, too many hands to have access to authorizing funds being spent, you end up with 2 or 3 people that are spending with the best intentions, but by the time that gets to my secretary who does the paying the bills, there's too many people in it. So we're going to try to do 1 station, 1 person for each of those accounts. So that's where that came from. But the totals are essentially the same as last year.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming down this evening. Good
pleasure.
luck
Thank
with
you.
your surgery.
Thanks. Thanks for accommodating.
Nice job, man.
I tried.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
And the treasurer is on page 13.
Hey, Laura, how are you?
Good, how are you today? Thank you. And our city treasurer, Laura Gignac, thank you for coming down this evening. Thank you. So we've been starting off, what's going on in your department holistically, what's going on in your department from personnel right through. We're not just going line by line, but having a dialogue back and forth.
Okay. Well, I've been in the department over a year now. We've done a lot of reorganizing the department so we can find things easier. We have gotten rid of things that we didn't need to have anymore. We had a lot of things that could have been destroyed years ago. So we did a lot of cleaning out so we could work a little more efficiently. We did have a layoff in our department, so we did lose our tax title clerk. She has been gone since December. So we've had to take on additional duties in that department. We've also started to work our tailings accounts, which weren't worked in years. And we were able to recover about $66,000 that
And
was
what were
left
those
behind.
called? I'm sorry.
Tailings. Tailings are old checks that have not been cashed by either vendors or employees. That have to be worked, and you have to advertise them in the newspaper. But we have been able to recover about $66,000, which hasn't been done in the past. It wasn't actively being worked. We are working on moving a lot of our tax title properties that have been sitting around for a number of years along the process to see if we can get people on payment plans, and/or we're seeking foreclosure. I'm also looking to do multiple auctions. We do have properties that can be auctioned off, so additional income can be brought into the city.
Great. And how's everything going for you?
Great.
In the okay. So and you've tried to divide up jobs within the department, and you think that it's actually helped with efficiency?
It has. One thing that was I identified is that we needed some cross-training. Not one person should know just one job, because if that person gets sick or leaves, you have an issue. So we have done a lot of cross-training amongst each other. Not only have I learned tax title, I have another person in the office that knows how to do that as well. So we've been working together on trying to clear out some of those old tax title properties. So it's been great.
Great. Councilor Hall?
Sure. And I want to thank you for that and bring that to your attention. I had a constituent that I worked with the treasurer. And I can tell you, the treasurer has been extremely aggressive about going after the outstanding tax debts to the city that have been, and some of these are very large amounts of money. So I want to commend you. I mean, I didn't know this happened. We walked through the process together with one of our constituents and actually helped the individual, in my opinion.
Yes.
And they were very accommodating to that. So I appreciate your aggressiveness on that. I'm sure other people don't necessarily, on the other end of it, don't necessarily agree for your aggressiveness, but, and probably not a bad word, but you're going after those. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Conti and then Councillor Parika.
Yes, on line 530101, professional services, you have requested $35,000. What percentage of that is legal services?
All of that's legal services.
All of it?
Yes. And I've requested an increase because as I'm looking ahead at what I'm moving towards, either sending them to Mike Siddell for foreclosure, it's going to be an increased cost. Every property for foreclosure is $515, depending on if it's a single family or if it's multiple family, that changes. It's also $75 for recording. That's just to bring it there. That's not his fee for service. There are some properties that have been in tax title for quite some time that really need to be moved out and shouldn't be sitting anymore. It's not doing the person justice or the city any justice.
Yeah, the other question I had was that in the banking services,
Yes.
we deal with one major bank?
Oh, no. We have, I would say we have about 10 to 15 banks that we deal with. Most of those banks do not charge for their services, depending on the services that you have. But you also need to understand that our bonding, Unibank, any kind of fees for continuing disclosure are also included in that. So for anything that we do with our bonding agent.
So when we do bonding, though, we always put in an extra amount to cover the advertising cost, the bond application fee, why isn't that covered in there?
It's not because it's not exclusive to the bond. It's continuing disclosure is for all the bonds that we've had in the past where they have to disclose certain items. So that's a separate fee. It's not included in the bond itself. It's after the fact.
Got it.
Councillor Parika.
About how many properties do we have that are involved in tax title?
278 right now. Yes. $2.4 million.
Go get it.
Yeah.
And you're saying that you're
Well, I
being aggressive about it. So what's changed? What are you doing? You said they're on there, they need to get off. What's the process? What do we...
Well, I've started to go through everything from start to finish. A to Z, going from the oldest to the newest, or, just reading every folder and seeing what part of the process it is. And I send out letters. Many of these people have received 5 to 10 letters at this point. So I will send a series of letters out, and if I have no response, then I'm moving those over to the attorney to move forward with them. I don't think in the past, remember that position was a part-time position, so the previous person doing tax title was only 20 hours a week. So I don't know if the follow-up was done as much as it probably could have been, by no fault of her own. But I think more follow-up and, make phone calls if someone's on a payment plan. Hey, it's been about a week, you might want to, make your payment, or have you put it in the mail already? A lot of these people weren't aware their property was in tax title.
Councillor Parika had a follow-up, and then Delicio, and then Hall.
So, your department faced many challenges,
Yes.
this over the course of the last year with the budget issues that we've had. But it sounds to me like your department has made the best of it.
Absolutely.
So I give you kudos for that. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. And when I'm here, I see your department on a regular basis, and everyone seems very happy and content, and there's probably a sense of relief because now they all know there's a safety net for everybody in your department.
Yes.
I think one of the things that we struggle with is customer service, and it is my understanding that even though the tax title portion of this can be challenging and difficult for the individual, the way it is being handled, we're giving them options where that may not have been the case previously. So to provide that kind of service I appreciate that as well. This is my opportunity to give her I could
Thank
give you
you.
those kudos, but and again, however we can get the money back or put those properties in foreclosure and get them sold off.
The
It
first
benefits
option is
everybody.
always payment plans. Always try to work with someone because, a lot of times these are large sums of money and they're going to need some time. They're on a monthly income or a fixed income, so they need to budget that money in over a period of time. So we try to work with them doing that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Counselor Delosio?
How are you?
DJ.
Quick question for you. When it comes to staffing development, I noticed that it almost tripled. Line item looking at 532015 from the revised budget of 2016. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I sure can. That is for our annual schooling, and for Heather Uriat, the assistant treasurer, and myself are attending annual school at UMass Amherst. They are classes that run for 3 days, and they teach you all the different things that are part of your job. At the end of 3 years, we can test to become certified. There's a lot of information that you can learn. There's a lot of changes. They talk about changes, so it keeps us up to date on everything that's new. So that schooling is what that staff development is. You're welcome.
Counselor Delosio, did you have a follow-up?
All set.
Okay,
Thank you.
Counselor Hall?
So if we were to say, the increase in the budget, the little bit of increase, if you would, in the legal fees, would it be a fair statement to say that the money or the potential money that you're able to collect, or even the money that you've collected so far back to the city, would probably pay for a lot of what we see here?
Absolutely.
And have some left over, which I hate to say that.
I can tell you right now, as of this year, we're already, from 2016 to 2017, we went from 380,000 to 444,000, and that is just in this time to April. That's not the end of the year so far.
And I just want to make sure I understand it. When you go through either an agreement with a property owner or you go through tax foreclosure, attorney's fees are factored into the repayment plan, is that correct?
Yes, they are.
Anyone else have a question? Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Did you have anything else you want to add besides what you've already said?
I don't think there's anything else I want to add. If there are any
Counselor
additional
Conti?
questions.
So Barry, if the tax title subject is paying the attorney fees, they don't go back into Laura's account, they go into the general fund.
I believe it either goes in your revolving fund or the general fund.
Which,
I don't know if it's when you have an agreement or a tax, I'm not sure if there's a difference between which one of those avenues a person takes, an agreement or tax foreclosure. I know in tax foreclosure, it is factored into the judgment.
so Laura, of the 278 parcels that are in tax title, that's about 2% of the total in the city. $2.4 million valuation is the assessed value. You're likely to recoup far less than that in a liquidation, and perhaps even 1/3. It's hard to speculate what you're going to realize as a liquidation. But I just want the public to not think that there's $2.4 million of value sitting out there that we haven't reaped. That's not true.
That is not.
It's $2.4 million of an assessment, which in a liquidation may yield $500,000 to $700,000 of funds to go into the general fund account.
That's correct.
If you were capable of doing them all in 1 year, which you're not. There's no way you could close on 278 parcels.
No, absolutely not.
Counselor Delosio?
Thank you. Again, when we talk about the payment plans and the legal fees covering that, the legal fees, you need that $35,000 that you're budgeting for because you're only collecting a portion at a time. So you're not getting big chunks of money that's going to
That's
go right
correct.
to that legal fee. So
That's correct.
ultimately, that payment plan and the percentage, which is probably relatively small in that payment plan that goes back to the legal, that's probably more of an offset over time. You're going to see that to build up.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Okay. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome.
It's okay. I just need 1 minute to use the ladies' room really quick. Can I just recess for 2 minutes? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We're recessed just for 2 minutes. I can use the ladies' room.
Good, how are you?
Yeah.
I'd like to call budget and appropriations back to order for 6:49 PM. Thank you very much. We have the city clerk, Steve Withers. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Counselors, as we said, we're not going line by line, but just changes in your department from last year to this year, obviously. Residual effects from last year going forward.
There's really very little changes from this year, next year to this existing year. Very little. I mean, $100 here, $100 there, but approximately $196,000 of the $199,000 budget is salaries, so salaries and longevity. So there's not much else. So.
Exactly. Did anyone have?
I did make a comment to. Can I just add a little something? I did make a comment to Ms. Lacasse when I sat down. Something I omitted when I did my budget was these are the three we have 3 books, one for births, one for deaths, and one for marriages. And these are where we record every birth, every death, and every marriage in these books. And they're for 3 years. And this is the 3rd year, so I am going to need those for next year. And I did contact the company, and I did get a bid, and I think it's $825 and for the 3 books and the pages. They're very expensive. But other than that, there's really nothing much to say.
Councilor Hall, are you all set? And then Councilor Parikh, and then Conti?
I do want to ask about, I think I bring this up before. I apologize if we've already answered this question. There was going to be a process of scanning documents in. Is that in your office that was doing that? No, okay.
Protective services.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that $8.25
Shut
per
it off,
book or
but
just for
I
3
didn't put
books?
It's for the 3 books.
Okay, thanks.
The books are 175 each, and the pages are 100 each, so they're like 270. Yeah, they're very expensive and very heavy.
They have little gold lines in them, I think.
Right.
Real
But
gold.
this has been the way the city's done it, going back as far as we can go. So, I mean, it's just another one of those extra things. I don't think by law you have to do it.
Right.
But in my opinion, it's a nice thing, and I think we should continue it.
Do you also put it in a computer?
Oh, yeah, it's in the computer. Yes.
Councilor Parika and then Conti.
So you had a reduction in staff as well over the course of this last year?
Oh, well, we had the one clerk, we stayed on for 3 months, and then her whatever the buyout is at the end for sick days and vacation. So that's why there's a difference in the salaries.
And how's that working out for your department right now?
Depends on the time of year. We've had 6 weeks of dog season. We're just digging out of that right now. So, but we made it. So we just smile and go about our business, you know.
That's right, I have to pay mine still. Councilor Conti and then Hall.
Councilor Baker, touched my subject.
So during those time periods, I know there was some talk about having individuals be able to cross-train or cross-cover, if you would. So during those 6 weeks where you do have a bump, have you gotten the support you needed? If you asked for it?
Yes, any support I've asked for, I've got.
Okay, I'm glad.
For that particular season, though, we pretty much did our thing, so.
Okay, thank you, I
But
appreciate
yeah,
it.
anytime I've asked for something, I've always got it, so.
Good to hear.
Anyone else have a question? Okay. Thank you, Ms.
Can I just say one more thing? What I hope to do this year for next year's capital improvements is put together a proposal for updating our basement vault and modernizing our office, which will probably be a pretty big undertaking, and I would expect would probably cost somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 to do it. But I do want to get that done. I do want to get it in the capital improvements list, so that somewhere down the road, when we may have some extra money in the city, that's something that we could actually look at to do.
And even as the treasurer was here, implementing any changes, it will help the department be more efficient too, if we modernize, update.
Right. See, one of the things that was interesting, I went over to North Attleboro probably 2 months ago and just looked at their basement vault. And what they've done is they combined the treasurers, they pretty much knocked down walls, combined the treasurers, the clerks, I think the collector has stuff down there. And this company came in and totally organized everything. And the way it's all in boxes, it's very simple to find things, it's extremely organized. If you ever went down there, you go, holy mac, look at this is really kind of cool. What was I going to say? Oh, and the other thing that the company does is they also tell these departments when they can destroy certain records, which is a really good thing too, because they actually have a list of all the records that we have, and every month they shoot out an email saying, clerk, you can get rid of this from 1992, which is kind of a cool thing, based on state guidelines, so.
Councilor Parika?
Besides the vault internally in your office, what is it that you would like to see improved? If we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it. So what is it? Is there anything in particular? Is there like a interim piece of machinery or something like that that would be helpful to your department?
Right now, no.
Okay.
Right now, no. Once I get a better grasp on it. Like, for instance, right now, we've been doing things, that office has been doing things that they've done for 100 years. For instance, every birth, an index card gets done and gets put in a file cabinet. Every death, an index card gets done and gets put in a file cabinet. We actually use these for births and deaths going way back as a double check. But now everything that we do goes in the computer. So in essence, that's like extra work that we don't need to do. So we're actually starting this month stopping that because it's just extra labor to do things that it just seems like there's so much duplication in there, I guess is my point. It's the same thing with the dogs. I mean, we have an individual card for every dog licensed in the city of Attleboro. The only reason we have to have it is for rabies clinic, because in speaking with the Dan up in MIS, we can't get internet over there, they can't download anything over there, so we can't use computers over there, so we have to have the cards as a way of keeping track of what we do, which is absolutely crazy, but anyway. But that's the biggest frustration. It's like we're still doing things that we were doing 50 years ago, and so we're starting to really look closely at that and say, I go to Sharon, I go to Elizabeth, do we really need to do this? Well,
Yeah.
so, but other than that, everything's fine. I have no complaints.
Would you be maybe looking for an outside consultant? I would suspect that North Attleboro probably have that come in and maybe do an assessment of your office to give you some design ideas, some of the things that you're talking about right here. I know you can get information from other municipalities, but perhaps it sounds like they had a consultant come in. Would you be interested?
The company
in
that they
something like
use has actually 4 or 5 years ago made a proposal to Betty, and I actually have that proposal because I have spoken to her. But I am making a conscious effort to get more involved in the Mass City Clerks Association, and so as I move forward with that, I'll be seeking some guidance on that. So, and I drove Barry crazy last week by asking him stupid questions about the budget.
No, you didn't. Not at all.
But other than that, everything's good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any further questions? Okay, and modernization is always good to switch over and get somebody to come in and see what's going on. Councilor Conti?
Steve, the assessors have partnered with the University of Massachusetts to have a summer conference which leads to educational training and leads to a certification. The treasurer just mentioned she's put $2,000 in her budget for her staff to do that. Is there a clerk's curriculum at UMass on standards or procedures?
Not that I'm aware of. There is one in, actually it takes place in New Hampshire. I think what college, Southern New Hampshire, which actually you get accreditation, national accreditation for Clerks Association. It's a 3-year process. I think you go for a week for like 3 years or something.
But it's not Massachusetts.
No.
So are you tied into the DLS with the Commonwealth? No.
No.
Bureau of Labor, BLA? No?
No.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Nope.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Steve Withers.
Thank you. Steve, nice
City
job.
Clerk, thank you very much.
We'll see you at capital improvements for your California closet.
All right.
Okay, next on our list, health services.
That's ridiculous.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Hey, Doc, how are you?
Health services, page 46, correct?
Page 46.
Do you have any materials for any of the accounts or anything that you'll be passing out? Sometimes you guys have handouts for anything.
Not necessarily unless there's
Okay.
anything you
No,
wouldn't
I
have.
know, and like in the past, sometimes you have had a breakdown of accounts, what's coming in, what's going out,
You have solid waste, right?
the solid waste.
Yeah, no, but we could get you that, any information.
Yeah, I'll get back to you
you
on
need.
that, because I know other councils have asked in the past, like last year going through to see what's coming in, if the admins were being paid from one account or another account, where the money is being, the revenue stream and the expenses, where they're coming and going. So I'll get in touch with you to go over, do you remember last year when we had the whole breakdown of everything? So,
If you have any question about any particular line item, I think we would be able to probably
Yeah.
tell you tonight where it is, whether it's in the revolving fund, whether it's on the city side of the user rate. We
yeah,
got
and
solid
we'll go
waste.
through all that, and what we're doing is not just going line by line, but having a dialogue back and forth. If they have a question about any differences from one year to the next, why you're asking for a certain amount, what's the reasoning behind what you're asking, and then also what you would like to comment on your department, whether it's a positive or a negative. Maybe the budgetary constraints are affecting your budget, pros and cons, residual effects from the previous year. Are we seeing any, or maybe next year, from any changes within the department? And I know we do have one of the best services provided to the city. So would you like to start off with anything you or Dr. Quinn have to say first, or do you want me to open up the questions?
If I could, Councilwoman, I would just maybe start off by directing you to that the Health Department is requesting a decrease for fiscal year 2018 as compared to fiscal year 2017. It is only a matter of about $2,000, but it is a decrease from the current fiscal year.
Okay, now salaries. In your department, how many people, who's getting paid from what account? Not specifically the number, or if there is a number here, or if they're coming from a revolving account. Basically, who's working for your department and where's the money coming from to pay those people?
Okay. Well, if I could, I would start off by saying we have, of course, our health officer, Dr. Quinn, who is basically in a contractual position with the city. Myself as health agent, there's a deputy health agent, our solid waste administrator, our public health nurse, our outreach worker, our senior clerk, and 1.5 full-time laborers, and also an independent food contractor position. And we also have a solid waste enforcement inspector who is currently paid out of a DEP grant with some funds supported from the city, but in next fiscal year, you will see that is no longer requested because it is our understanding that we will be able to have the DEP grant pay 100% of that position, so there will be no need for cities matching funds next fiscal year.
And when are we looking at that when are we looking at that?
As a figure, or do you mean the time-wise?
For the person's position that'll be covered through the grant. Do we know a time frame?
It's kind of indefinite, but it will go into next fiscal year. There's no guarantee of a deadline, but I believe it's our understanding that we should be able to fund that position likely for next fiscal year through the DEP grant, separate of city council.
Okay, and when you get calls and it's after hours, and the people that go out, who do you send out?
After hours, it's typically myself or our deputy health agent, possibly Dr. Quinn.
Oh, wow, okay.
Maybe our public health nurse, depending on the
And your
the issue at
salary
hand.
without overtime, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Did we have any more questions for the council? Councilor Conti?
Yeah, I had a question on, I have this question every year, so I'll ask it again this year because it's targeted. The waste recycling $80,000 contract that you have for metal, white metal, it's account 529060.
Yes.
The reason why I have trouble with this is because on my road, on Berwick Road, I put out a gas grill and it's gone in 22 minutes. I put out a washer and dryer and it's gone in 15 minutes. I put anything metal out on my curb and it's gone certainly within an hour. So if I were to call your recycling guy, your metal guy, he would show up Thursday and there'd be nothing there, which I think happens frequently, based on the environmental elves that routinely circulate throughout the city. Is this a line item in your budget because the state mandates that you have to show that you're doing something to pick up metal? Or is this something that we're paying a contractor $80,000 because he can't pick up enough metal to pay a profit for picking it up with the labor involved and the truck involved and the gas involved, and we have to have some sort of service to pick up metal in the city? The question I have is, we've been doing this now for a couple of years. Is it wise to be doing it that way, or should we move to a system where there's metal been on the curb for a week, let's go pick it up, rather than having a contract for a truck in constant circulation on contract for the city? $80,000 is a lot of money. And when on Berwick Road, see, absolutely, that's a high traffic road I'm on. I'm sure there's, I don't know, 10,000 cars a day on Berwick Road. And if I lived on
Spruce Lane.
you know, there you go, Star Lane, nobody travels down Star Lane, especially at the end. So they could put out a washing machine and would be there for a long time. So I guess I need to hear, again, a justification for $80,000, because it just irks me. Because in my location and people that I talk to, it seems like an excess.
Well, to your point, yes, there are cases where we have people put out metal waste, and it is removed by someone who drives by and who's looking for that metal or the scrap metal. And if you are on a main road, that is more likely to happen, and I can maybe ask you to fill in a little bit, but it's not just metal pickup. Television sets are also part of this program, and when you look at what it really costs to dispose of a television set, I think we're a little bit of a, maybe if you were to compare things, we might, it's a necessity, I think. We have a program now that has been in place in the city for a long time. To your point, it is a very generous program. We have had this discussion. It is something that the citizens of the community have grown to like. If we were to remove this program, I do think we would have an issue of what are we going to do with the metal waste, especially when people are accustomed to a particular service. And again, I think this goes back many years. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's just, this hasn't come about in the past few years. I think the line item was transferred out of a revolving account in a recent year and went to the city side, but this has always been, is my understanding, part of your user rate. So this is paid out of the user rate.
Councilor Parika? As Councilor Conti was speaking, I was thinking more of the television sets and the computer monitors and things like that. And please correct me if I'm wrong. So I have kind of a twofold question. After you get 2 free stickers for a television set, and after that it's $5, $10. What is it?
$10.
$10. So do you have a figure on how much revenue we get for those additional stickers a year?
We actually pay the contractor for those extra TVs. So that's why we keep track of it all in a spreadsheet. So if you come in for your 3rd sticker now, at the end of the month when they call me and ask me how many extras there were over anybody having 2, I pay him for those extra TV stickers. So he charges me $10, I charge you the $10 for the extra one. But he allows 2 per household as part of the contract.
Okay.
And there is a lot of hazardous waste in the CRTs, the monitors, the electronic items. If they were to sit out at the curb, people stop playing with them. The other thing is we started with the drop-off program at the recycling center, so a lot of people drop off their electronics and metal too. And he collects all of that. I call him when our trailer's full. He collects it all, sorts through it all, and he pays to dispose of all of that too. We would have to have our own trucking, our own laborers to handle that, take everything apart. He sorts it all out, he sends it out. He knows what he's doing. He's receiving revenue for the good stuff, but he's also paying for the TVs and.
I have heard of different fundraisers, like with all the different groups and things like that. Well, they'll do a pickup and people get funding back. So we don't have a plan like that here, that there's a certain amount and after a certain amount you. Like the Attleboro Whitehawks had a thing where you could bring your TV monitors and all that kind of stuff, and then whatever there was a set amount of proceeds that the gentleman had to make, and then anything over that the organization would get. Any discussion, any thought? Have you heard of anything like that before?
Never heard of that.
Oh,
really?
It's out there. It's out there.
Councilor Hall?
So it's not just the picking up of the items that we're paying for, it's the whole contracting to really take care of everything, all the things that go into play into this.
The
to make
disposal.
sure that, and there is a necessity to have this picked up expediently. Maybe not as expediently as the people driving down your street, but fairly
I
expedient.
won't pick up TVs, I might add.
Okay.
If I put out a TV, it would be there
Thank
until
you.
the city came to pick it up.
But it sounds like, and I mean, is it fair to say that you want to pick up those items expediently for the reasons that you said, the hazmat potential, people playing with them? I mean, what is the time frame that when somebody calls you that you have to pick that stuff up? In other words, I come in, I bring my $10, I say I have something. How long does the contractor have to pick that item up?
Well, he picks up every Friday, so we tell people when they pick up their sticker, call the number now, you'll get on this week's list. So basically, within a week, it should be called in and picked up. I mean, if it sits around on the curb for a couple of weeks, it's gonna get kicked around, fall in the
glass
street. We
everywhere.
get calls, you know, something's, TV sitting on the sidewalk, now it's in the street, now we gotta go out and pick it up. It's kicked around, there's broken glass. So this way, we know everything's getting picked up and properly recycled.
Thank you.
Council Delicio?
Thank you. That was a pretty good segue to what my question was. Is it fair to say, Cheryl, that if we weren't using this contractor, we would be paying for it one way or another anyway, in terms of now we'd have added capacity to your department, which realistically could end up being more than the 80, in terms of, because now we'd have to find a way to dispose of it, which would probably have an additional added cost as well. So is it fair to say that we would be paying for this one way or another?
I would definitely say, yeah. I think we'd probably need more manpower, vehicle, plus the disposal cost of it.
And I asked this question last year, if that 80,000 was just cut, if we just cut hypothetically, and I asked this last year, because even afterwards, we have, and what I'm asking all the counselors, if they have questions now, or potential cut or anything, I want to know, what is the effect? I don't want to hear when we're approving the budget, making all these adjustments, and we don't have someone to vet out these reductions. What will happen if we cut it in half or the whole account? What happens? Specifically, for clarification, what will happen?
White metal doesn't get picked up.
In that, what's the effect on that?
Complaints to the city will tremendously increase. This is a service we provided for a very long time. People are used to the service, and albeit it is a very extraordinary service. There are very few communities in the Commonwealth that provide this service, but we do. And I think we have a population that's used to that. And if we were ever going to change that, I don't think we could ever do it with just an immediate cutoff. There would have to be a learning curve, there would have to be publication, so that people were aware that this service was no longer being provided. Because we would see the white metal, we would see the TVs, we would see those kinds of items sitting on the curb. And the health department would have to follow up with the property owner to dispose of it properly. It would be a tremendous amount.
But in addition to that, I just want to add one thing to Mr. Delicio's point. You know, homeowners are used to this benefit. They pay for it, but they're also used to it. And if their white metal isn't getting picked up any longer, and Alan and Cheryl and Dr. Quinn, you've acknowledged this before, some people take it upon themselves to get rid of their own washer and dryer. And we've seen it before in other communities where you just see a washer and dryer on the side of the road, or you see it in someone's parking lot or somewhere else. You know, that's the kind of thing that I think Cheryl and Alan are trying to avoid as well.
And that's why I'm asking you for the justification for your department, if that was to be affected. And I know I've even called you down in the Harriet Thayer area, in the back, the swampy marsh areas in the past couple of years, maybe 3 years, people dumping a lot back there. You've had to go down areas, as you're saying, Barry, and it's wetlands. So, thank you, Councilor Delicio.
Thank you. So if we do cut it, to follow up on the chairwoman's question is, if we cut it, gotta have the ramp up time, get it contractually, it's probably gonna be a bit of a headache. But on the other side of that coin, you're now shifting the burden from the city back to the resident. And to Mr. LaCassa's point, we do the 10-mile river cleanup every year. And the stuff that we're pulling out of that river, it's disgusting, to be quite honest. So I think that we would just be adding to that problem. Aside from it just being on the street, aside from it just being pushed off, I think that it would cause several different problems. So I think there's a lot of value to this program.
Okay, Councilor Blair?
If you remember in the past, those of us that have been here and been residents for a while, we had a trash situation with people putting stuff on the streets and backyards and people's trash bins. I know it's an expense to the city, but it also keeps the city clean. I think if you did away with that, you'd see an awful lot of trash spread throughout the city. you know, dumping somebody else's yard. I hate to say it, but that's what happens, and it becomes a trash situation. It's an environmental trash situation, as you said. People tend to throw that stuff where it won't be seen, and where it's not seen is a little side road down by the swamp somewhere. So, yes, it is expensive. Yes, we have probably one of the best trash systems in the state, no doubt. And I think it's proven to make this city a lot cleaner than it was in the past.
I will say this, that $80,000 amounts to about $5.68 on the rate. So for $5.68, 14,000 people in the city of Attleboro have that ability to call on a Friday and have their washer or their dryer picked up. And I think that's, if you ask your constituents, it's probably a fair bet.
And if that was cut, what's your plan B? So what do you do in a department, what do you do?
Well, the homeowner would have to take that on, as was said, and then we'd receive the complaints to go over to Peckham Street and pick up this, and, you know, that's manual labor and potential work injury too.
If you get a new refrigerator or something like that, it costs you $50 to have it taken away by Lowe's or Home Depot,
Right.
so already the $5 makes it.
That's a good point. Councilor Conti?
So I'll close out my comments on the white metal and move on to professional services. In my opinion, the white metal program could, for 1 year as a pilot program, go to every other week and be cut from $80,000 to $40,000, and that's a person's salary. So, you know, I don't think we need to pick it up every week. I don't like the program. I still don't like the program. I'm going to be recommending a recommendation to cut the program, but on professional services, my question is on account 530101, professional services, what percentage of that is legal?
I'm sorry?
What percentage of that is legal?
0.
0. So that is what?
That's well, our intention is that's 100% the city's food inspection program. 100%. Our current food inspector that the city has been very lucky to have these many years has decided to take some justified time off. And although he does intend to, per our request, to stay on in a limited capacity, we feel that we're in a transition here, and we feel that to actually meet the needs that we're mandated to do under state regulations, we have to increase this line item because we need extra help to comply with that. And for example, when I became the city's health agent back in 2013, the health department issued 320 some odd food permits, and that ranges anything from a temporary event to a farmer's market to a full-fledged grocery store with all the bells and whistles. In calendar year 2016, we issued 381. So we've seen an increase of 60 permits in that 3-year period, and to try to do the best we can to satisfy some mandates. 60 typically, not necessarily a temporary type permit, but 60 permits coincides with 120 inspections. That's a minimum.
On the other side of the fence on this line item, I think that food safety and food inspection is critically important. It's an element of public safety. And what I think I heard you say is that this is to meet the minimum standard.
This is to try to meet the minimum standards, yeah.
Per year.
Yeah.
So,
Plus re-inspections.
yeah, so are you comfortable with that minimum standard?
Doesn't matter, it's what the state mandates.
Okay, but you could rise above the minimum standard?
Oh, sure, certainly we could. I don't think this allows for that per se. I think with this dollar amount that we're asking for, I still think there will be a requirement on not only my part, but other personnel in the department to make up for the slack, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, there's a close-by city that has 2 food inspectors. It's just a little bit larger than Attleboro, so that gives you some kind of relative comparison.
Well, that's what I thought. I thought for our population, this was a small number, and I'm not so sure that the minimum standard is the standard that we should shoot for. I mean, if we're if we're above the standard on everything else, why aren't we above the standard on food inspection, which is a critical
Well,
issue?
I think at Health Department-wise, I think we have a pretty good track record of sort of being a leader, so I would have to say that we do shoot for more than that, but if we're dealing with, when we come up with this particular figure, we're trying to work with the matter at hand and with the budget at hand. And that's why you see that figure. That would be a figure to meet what we believe a minimum standard to have a reasonably or a very good contractual food inspector to come in and meet those minimums.
Councilor Parika, then Hall.
Thank you. So there is so when you take apply for a permit, there's a fee for that.
That's correct.
Does that fee, and there was a slight increase to fees last year, implemented for some this year. Thank you very much. Does the cost of the fee for that offset any of this, or where do those funds go?
The fees are deposited into the general fund.
General fund.
Yeah.
So yes.
And yes, and sort of to answer your question, Dr. Quinn did sign in a new fee schedule that you are aware of last year, and the fee schedule was adopted to be reasonable and fair and try to meet those demands of what it actually, we believe, costs the city to perform those inspections that we need to perform.
I was just trying to...
It's not perfect.
No, I agree. I think that your fee structure, as I have seen it, is reasonable. I'm just trying to build the case for the fact that there is a fee associated with those. And I know some are 50, 75, 120.
It depends on what it is. We try to be fair, and there would be, so if you're on the lower end of the fee schedule, you may be like a retail establishment, something like a gas station, if you will, that maybe sells some incidental food. That's typically a minimum inspection, but that's not always the case. So you would see that type of establishment on the lower end of the fee schedule. Mm-hmm. And then you'd have something like a full-fledged restaurant that maybe has a bakery and takeout and retail space and large square footage. You would see those folks on the higher end of the fee schedule.
Councilor Hall and then Councilor Conte.
Thank you. So I'm going to use this saying in both of the questions that I'm going to ask. So we have a saying that says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So would you say for the health department inspections, it ain't broke and it doesn't need to be fixed? Do you feel it's an adequate program?
Well, I think it's an adequate program. I think there's always room for improvement, and I think we've always discussed this and we strive for that. And I can sit here and tell you that I do believe that Attleboro is an example to other health departments in the region. Dr. Quinn had mentioned there is another community in the area which is of a similar size, a little larger. They do issue more permits than the city of Attleboro does. That particular community has 2 full-time inspectors who are city employees on the city's payroll to cover not that many more inspections. So I guess I would like to answer that we are going through transition. We may say something different next year. But one thing I think we do in Attleboro is we do things very efficiently. And that's where I kind of circle back now to the inspector that we've had for many years. He's an incredible inspector. He's a really honorable person, a very, very thorough worker. And I think he always treated his contracting role with the city that he was an employee of the city. And I think I said it last year, and I've said it years before, we've had an absolute bargain. We've had an absolute bargain. And if you compare that again to the other city, if you look at a dollar amount, we are behind. Compared to that, we should have, as a minimum, a full-time inspector on staff in the health department just devoted to food. So we are behind on that regard. But again, we have been very efficient. This year, we don't know where this is going to go.
So there's no risk. So we're not at risk for anything, in your opinion. We're not at risk.
Not now, but that is one of the reasons why we've asked for this increase. To your point, I think,
yes,
is that we would be concerned. We want to stay ahead of that. Is something that we would lose sleep over if we are not out there being very proactive in the food establishments in the community. And again, I think we've been able to do this very on the cheap and very efficiently. But again, we are in a transition this year, and that's where we find ourselves with this particular figure. Do I think we could devote more finances to that? Absolutely.
Okay, good, thank you. That's a reasonable answer. And let's go back to the, back to the white metal again. And I'm going to use the same, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Was it broken? White metal program broken? Is that why we, in your estimation, in your thought process, was it a broken program when people were allowed to have to be responsible for bringing their own white metal and TVs to the dump themselves?
Well, to Councilor Blair's point, you have the dump and run folks who dump things on the edge of the city. But then, just as bad, people leave it in their backyard and don't get rid of it, so that becomes a harborage for, particular animals or what have you. So there is that aspect. So in a way, things were broke. My concern on Councilor County's point that perhaps go to every other week and cut it in half, I'm not sure you'd still have this particular service. I'm not sure the one provider that's been doing this would accept a half cut and for half the amount of weeks. But, Cheryl has put this out to others to try to get others to come in and bid on this, and it's very hard to find someone. So I'd ask if you talk to Cheryl more on that before that kind of proposal.
That's a huge clarification. That's important, what you just said. Councilor Perica?
To Dr. Quinn's point, if we went to it every other week, it's double the amount. So we may not have the trucking supplies and things like that to do, or the staffing to be able to do that. I mean, that's a question that most certainly should be asked, and we should have an answer to that, but I can see that being a fairly reasonable answer to that.
Well, it's fair to ask the question to try to save money, but it's there are unintended consequences, I'm afraid, on that.
And that's important because, as you said, there was obviously a contract with the vendor. So embedded in the contract is exactly what we're doing. So we have a contract with the vendor, and then you're saying that will switch the contracts there. So there's other things within your department with contracts, things that the council, if we're not aware of, that would be a negative residual effect on that, yes. Because even contractually, what you already have obligated to this contractor, how often do you renegotiate with this contractor?
Yearly.
Yearly? What part-time of the year? Do you know?
Right now?
It's usually about winter time, we start talking about this with the contractor. And this year, we actually did touch base with another contractor, and we felt pretty confident that if we were going to continue with that program, the deal we have now is the better deal.
And overall, I know I've had to call your office a lot, and I do appreciate it. You're very efficient over there. And even on South Main Street, I have seen, probably you hear less from me now, is all down the South Main Street, all of the washes, because there's a lot of tenement houses and apartment buildings. So the accountability then falls on the landlord, and if you have an absentee landlord also. So I have seen the trash, because I walk, pick up trash and everything, and I've had less. So I do see a positive effect. So Councilor Hall, then Perica.
Okay, so I'm still going back there because I still had questions about that. So, with the contractor, if you call and go pick it up in the swamp, if we said it's been tossed down some alleyway somewhere, is that part of the contract to go pick it up?
No, health department personnel typically will pick that up if it's on city-owned property. If it's private property, typically the health department will order the property owner to clean it up.
All right, so that's an extra cost that we have to pay anyways.
Yes.
All right, and then the other question I have is, so in the trash fees to the city, if you are in a situation where you have your own trash, your private property, and you have to get your own trash, do you pay the same? Is it the same fee that you have to pay the city? Does everybody pay the same fee, even if they don't get there, have to pay for? That's just a question. No.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, so if you live in a condominium community, you're required to pick up your own trash, or you pay for your own city trash to be picked up. Does the people that live in that place pay pay this $5.64 for?
Oh, so people that are out of our program, we will do a special pickup for a metal electronic item. They come in the health department, there's a $10 fee associated with that.
So what kind of trash fee would those people have to pay? They should not have a trash fee, correct?
Not with the city. No. They pay you should contract yourself with your own private recycling and trash.
But that's part of the health department, is that you have to prove to them that you are eligible to opt out of the city's program.
Gotcha. Thank you. And I have to say, I've had many people in my community, they ask me all the time about large items because we do have private pickup. And a lot of these are older people too, that aren't in the position where they're going to be able to go to pick this stuff up and put it in their own truck and bring it. They would have to pay somebody, and they'd have to pay somebody a whole lot more than $10 to have to do that.
That's right.
So I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's a huge point, because I've put a lot of items down out by New College, or different TVs and electronics. I don't have a truck. I'd have to find a truck, first of all, too.
Yeah.
So, Councilor Parika?
And just back to the professional services, I could not be more appreciative of the services that are provided. We have a stellar record. We don't have incidences of illness or things like that from our establishments. And again, I think the point should be made that I'm assuming that Councilor Conti is thinking that the $62,000 isn't necessarily enough.
Correct.
How I would agree with that. However, the fee structure for the permits does offset this. I mean, that money does go into the general fund, but that is kind of a self-funding circumstance, and it will be a big adjustment for your department.
It will, and it is definitely a concern of ours, for sure.
Any other questions? And if you're on this side, please get my because I can't turn my neck that way as much. That's why I kind of go this way. So please get my attention. Any other questions? The only thing that I've had from certain residents is the inconsistency of certain enforcement, where one neighbor may put something out, but they choose, put a sticker on this for a violation, but they take the neighbors. And inconsistency in that sense. And I'm very diligent putting my trash out. Everything has to be in a bag. I have seen, as I said, less stuff all over the place, because everything, I believe, like on South Main Street, the neighborhoods are putting in bags. But the enforcement aspect of it, people aren't happy with that, right?
So that's an equation with a couple variables, and it starts with who picks it up, which is waste management. So if they're grabbing it and throwing it in and we're getting tonnage, we don't want that. So then that creates a meeting between us and waste management on the tonnage. And then if they leave it, then there's concern by the residents, and stickers are placed. So it's kind of it's a back and forth actually between the hauler and the city health department, and trying to find a balance where everyone's treated the same and fairly, and limiting the number of tickets, but also not having a lot of tonnage that we have to pay for.
This is a continuing thing that we've had, Cheryl will tell you, along with our hauler. I think it's something that we consistently strive for. You're absolutely correct. There are inconsistencies, and it's really been at the top of our list. We're hoping that is improving. We believe it has been improving, but yeah, it is something that will continue to always need improvement.
So how do you handle those complaints within your office, obviously?
Cheryl responds to them. She takes pictures. A picture's worth 1,000 words, and
I mean, someone even has something up on social media of, I think it was some white truck just picking up. They had 4 on one of the streets that it looked like just somebody was taking somebody's trash. They didn't have any say a vest or any identification on the vehicle or anything.
Well, our department, we have a label. Our health department truck has a label, and our waste reduction enforcement coordinator has magnets on her car. She doesn't drive the truck. She has a vest that she wears. She leaves a door, if there's a problem with the trash or recycling, she leaves a door hanger and a sticker.
Okay.
And then a picture's taken, if this is for a trash or recycling violation, and then it's brought back to the office, the pictures are downloaded, and we send a letter to the owner explaining to them what the problem was.
Okay.
So they're not only getting, something on the door, something on the trash, they're getting a letter. The owner's getting a letter.
Because that's the one, like the largest, biggest complaint about the health department is the inconsistency and rules and regulations being followed. And all that information is found on our city website, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can drill down into your department, everything's there.
Everything's there, yeah. And they can always call the health department for any questions.
Just a quick one.
Jackson?
I love the white metal pickup. You know why? Because they pull everything apart after they get it all, and it helps our environment stay a little bit cleaner, so thanks for that. And we're all about that, right?
I appreciate that. And if I could, Councilwoman, like I said before, we get visits from other health departments come to our department for, well, depending on what the matter at hand is. And we can sit here and tell you that feedback we get from other health department employees from other communities, typically larger communities, I'll say that, but they are impressed at how clean the streets of Attleboro are. And we're not perfect. We know that, and we do have, issues like everybody else. But I think that's really important feedback for you folks to hear, because we're really proud when we hear that, and we do believe that it is a good portion of that is because of our trash program, which includes that white metal pickup.
Thank you. And the residents, really.
And the residents.
You'll see a lot of communities, cities where the recycling rate will go up and then plateau, but, Attleboro consistently has this increase. And obviously, it's going to find a peak, but it's been very helpful to have people on board.
That's great. And you all seem to work well together. I will say, for even within your departments, I haven't had any complaints on customer service.
Well, Cheryl's a good communicator. She'll answer the same day, she'll get right on it, she'll send someone out, and that's, again, you folks approving the budget and having people that can do that, so.
Yeah, and you're very proactive since, 3-4 years almost now?
A little over 4 years.
4 years, and I've seen a phenomenal difference. I think you're a positive effect, so thank you.
Thank you.
Can I
Thank you.
just
Appreciate
ask
that.
one more question? I get questions a lot from people about why am I paying so much for this service? And I say, well, you need to go to that department and they can tell you exactly what you're getting for that amount of money. Do you post that for each fee, that they get charged exactly what they're paying for in each fee? That's awful helpful if you do. Do you know what I'm saying?
Do you mean like a?
Go ahead.
Do you mean like a TV pickup or?
Well, what do you get? I pay $5.64. What do I get for that? I get just what you explained to us here, the picking up, the stripping, that kind of stuff, and the inspection. What do I get for my inspection, for a small business inspection? I'm just taking a number, I pay $100. What do I get for my $100? The people, seriously, they say to me, oh, it's too, I said, well, go and ask them what you're getting for that, and if the fee structure isn't, something reasonable, then we need to know about that. Yeah, so.
And that's a good point, and we'd be glad to do that. As far as the revolving account, that's pretty much broken down like Barry had mentioned earlier. It's approximately $5 on your user rate. It goes towards your white metal pickup. We can absolutely break that down. 25 cents goes to this, $1 goes to that.
That's really good information. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, as always. Any other questions, comments? Thank you. I'd like to adjourn at 7:38.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 7:38. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wastewater?
And Cheryl, the only other thing is from last year, you guys broke down that whole revolving